Kim Namjoon, Kim Seokjin, Min Yoongi, Jung Ho-seok, Park Ji-min, Kim Tae-young, Jungkook, BTS!
Imagine a city that has already changed before the stage lights come on, before the first note of music is heard, and before the 7 members of BTS appear in front of tens of thousands of fans. That is exactly what is happening in Toronto. The concert has not even begun yet. The pulse of the city already feels different. Fans are arriving from across Canada, public spaces are beginning to fill with BTS symbols, and most remarkably, the city of Toronto itself is officially joining the welcome. In one striking moment, Toronto's mayor was even seen wearing a purple suit, holding an army bomb, and following along with the army fan chant. But if we see this only as a mayor welcoming a famous group, we may miss something much bigger. This time, it is not just the fandom that is moving. An entire city is moving with it. This weekend, Rogers Stadium will become the center of attention as BTS takes the stage for 2 sold-out concerts. Around 100,000 people are expected to attend across the 2 shows. But there is one fact that makes the situation even more remarkable. Out of the 34 cities included in this world tour, Toronto is the only Canadian stop. For many Canadian fans, this is not simply a chance to see BTS in their own city. It is a rare opportunity to experience the group without having to travel to another country or another city. That is why the atmosphere was already building one day before the concerts. Fans were filling the streets, conversations about the shows were spreading throughout the city, and Toronto was gradually becoming a gathering point for ARMY from different parts of the country. Local television cameras captured the faces of fans arriving with extraordinary excitement. Some said they could not wait to see BTS, and even hoped they might make eye contact with one of the members. Others had traveled not only from Toronto but from different parts of Canada. One fan had even come from Winnipeg because, as she explained, BTS does not have a suitable stadium there and is unlikely to perform there. For her, the journey was completely worth it. Another fan said she had already seen BTS in Europe earlier in the summer but was still incredibly excited to see them again. Their enthusiasm had become so deeply woven into their daily lives that it was almost impossible to separate their personalities from their love for BTS. When asked whether their friends and families knew how excited they were, the answer was simple. Of course they did. For some, being an ARMY had become more than a hobby. It had become part of who they were. Interestingly, that excitement was even affecting the workplace. During the local broadcast, it was mentioned that several people declined to speak with the media because they had called in sick to work. One fan had even attended the event without telling his boss. When asked whether he might get into trouble if his employer found out, he simply laughed it off, saying that his boss was pretty cool. These small moments made the atmosphere in Toronto feel much more human. Behind the numbers and the sold-out stadium were individual stories, people arranging trips, taking time off, changing their schedules, and spending their time and energy simply to be in the same city when BTS arrived. But the fans' journey did not stop at the stadium. As they began arriving in Toronto, other parts of the city also became part of the BTS experience. One of those destinations was the official pop-up in downtown Toronto. It was not simply a place to purchase merchandise. It became another destination where fans could spend time, explore BTS-related products, and experience the atmosphere of the tour before entering the stadium. But this is also where another side of the fandom became visible. Fans were not simply praising everything without question. They were also surprisingly honest about the prices. Some said that keychains were selling for around $50 to $60 and felt that the materials were rather simple. The hat one fan wanted had already sold out. A hoodie was reportedly around $260, while another item, a throw blanket, was around $140. So even in the middle of all the excitement, reality remained part of the experience. Fans could love BTS deeply while still asking whether a particular piece of merchandise was actually worth the price. And this is where the Toronto story began to become something much bigger. Because what was happening was no longer simply a relationship between an artist and a fandom. The city government of Toronto also took official steps to welcome BTS. A motion adopted by the city council included plans to illuminate the Toronto sign in purple on August 22nd and 23rd, coinciding with the concert dates. There was also a request to proclaim the 2 days as BTS Week, along with an invitation for ARMY to wear purple and celebrate BTS's arrival together. When a city officially uses its public spaces and symbols to welcome an artist, the meaning becomes very different. This was no longer simply fan-made decoration. It was institutional recognition that elevated the weekend into a city-wide occasion. And the welcome did not stop with purple lights. A section of Yonge Street was also planned to receive the honorary name BTS Boulevard throughout the weekend. The timing was especially significant because it coincided with the Toronto Korean Festival, meaning BTS's arrival was not happening in isolation. At the same time, Toronto was preparing to showcase different aspects of Korean culture to the public. There would be food vendors, K-beauty vendors, activities created in collaboration with ARMY, a BTS experience zone, and BTS-inspired food and merchandise. Suddenly, what had started as a concert weekend was becoming connected to a much broader cultural celebration. This is where Toronto's atmosphere became even more fascinating. Visitors were not simply being invited to experience BTS as a music group, they were also being introduced to different aspects of Korean culture. The festival featured stages and performances, traditional Korean events, drumming, a handbook show, and traditional Korean music performed by a team invited from Korea. All of this was happening during the same weekend BTS was in Toronto. It was as if two powerful currents were meeting at the same point: the global cultural influence of BTS and a broader celebration of Korean culture in Canada. Together they created an atmosphere much larger than a concert alone. What makes the story even more interesting is that the BTS-related symbolism was designed to leave an impact beyond the weekend itself. The honorary street sign on Yonge Street was scheduled to remain in place for the designated period, while the production, installation, and removal costs were supported through sponsorship. Afterward, the sign was planned to be auctioned, with the proceeds going to the local 415 food hub. In other words, a symbol created to celebrate BTS's arrival was not intended to remain merely as temporary decoration. The event was also designed to connect that cultural moment with something that could benefit the local community. At the same time, the Toronto Korean Festival expected more than 100,000 visitors. That figure is on a similar scale to the estimated attendance for BTS's two concerts over the same weekend. This means Toronto is facing two major streams of people and cultural activity at almost the same time. One came from tens of thousands of fans arriving to see BTS, while the other came from visitors and members of the community looking to experience the Korean festival. The result was a weekend that was not only about music fans but also an opportunity to introduce Korean food, culture, beauty, businesses, and traditions to an even wider audience. And according to local reporting, there was also an economic and community purpose behind the honorary street name. City councilors explained that the designation could help encourage fans visiting the area to explore restaurants and businesses in Koreatown North. In other words, people who initially came because of BTS could also discover the surrounding neighborhood, enjoy local food, visit businesses, and experience a broader cultural atmosphere. This is the point where a concert begins to create an impact that extends far beyond the stadium itself. If we look at the entire sequence from the beginning, the picture becomes clear. It started with two sold-out concerts. Then fans began arriving from across Canada. They filled hotels, city neighborhoods, pop-ups, and other locations connected to the event. The city government then joined the welcome officially. Purple appeared in public spaces. A section of the street received an honorary name for the weekend. A Korean cultural festival unfolded at the same time. Local businesses became part of the flow of visitors. And even a temporary street sign celebrating BTS was designed so that after its use, the proceeds from its auction could return to the community. And perhaps this is the most fascinating part of all. BTS had not even stepped onto the Toronto stage when their impact was already visible. There had been no opening song, no army bombs waving in unison inside the stadium, no moment when all 7 members stood in front of tens of thousands of people. Yet the city was already changing. Fans were moving, businesses were preparing, the cultural festival was taking advantage of the moment, and the city government was officially welcoming BTS. Toronto seemed to be preparing a stage much larger than a stadium, a stage involving streets, communities, culture, and the people who live there. So when the stadium lights eventually go dark and the first sound fills the air, perhaps we will not actually be witnessing the beginning of this story.